Hey guys, welcome back to Community Starcraft 2. I'm your host Sidewinder. I'm bringing you another game. It's just going to be a community replay in the middle of while I'm putting together my Zerg versus Protoss guide, which should be coming out in the next couple of days. It's going to be a game between RandomGuy, who is the blue Zerg. He's spawning over here on the right side of the scrap station, which is actually a map I don't cast very often, mostly because a lot of people just don't like it. So they actually veto it from their ladder pool. He's going to be fighting ToGEnTy, who is the red Terran. And this is a strange map. Considering I don't cast on it very often, I will explain to you guys how it works. It's only a two-player map, but it is divided down this. If you want to look at this mini-map over here, it is divided down the center right here in terms of symmetry. And it's a strange map in the sense that the second is right here. It's pretty hidden away behind some destructible rocks. There's really no other way to get there unless you knock these rocks down or if you go in this entrance right here. So on two bases, it actually plays pretty defensively. Let me pull up the production tab in the meantime so we don't miss anything that's going on. 12 barracks coming down here, pretty normal. But anyway, these two bases are actually pretty easy to cover. It's just that taking your third is so weird because by then you're at the middle of the map or you have to knock down some rocks to expand way out here. So it's usually two base play. It's very close by air, so you'll see a lot of weird drops and air unit usage, stuff like that. Zerg players actually come in here, try to steal the extractor. And a little point about extractor stealing is that recently it's been discovered that that actually sets you back quite a bit as a Zerg player. So extractor stealing is really only if you want to get really late scouting information or if you just really don't want them to tech very fast. Either way, most of the time this is actually really not worth it because you lose a lot of mining time on that drone. Up here there's going to be a little bit of a harassment from the Terran player in order to try to stop the Zerg from putting their expansion down. Zerg player does actually have their spawning pool completed now. He's likely going to get speed as soon as he mines 100 gas. There's a queen coming out, so very normal stuff here thus far. One thing that is really awkward for Terran and Protoss players on this map is trying to figure out how you're supposed to wall right here because this is a huge ramp. You have to use several buildings in order to wall. And if the Zerg goes for like a 6-pull or something, it can be really chaotic to try to hold it off. I actually vetoed this map from my ladder pool, so I'll admit to not liking some of the maps just because this is just such an awkward map to try and play on. But in any case, if I were playing Terran, I would actually not really wall. I would just put my buildings kind of back here and wall off my mineral line just a little bit, so if Zerglings came in, my Marines could fight them, and if my SCVs needed to turn around and fight them, that could also happen. But that's just my preference. There's actually a factory going down, and there was a bunker that got started but not finished in order to block this Zerg from putting their hatchery up. But this Zerg is actually staying on one base for quite a while. It's now 23 supply, and he is still not expanded, even though he's floating almost 600 minerals. He does not have like a roach warren or anything up, so I really have to imagine this is not going to be a one base all in. So Zerg player's macro is kind of far behind. He's going to have to come down here and kill this bunker, and the Terran player can of course just cancel the bunker whenever and retain 75% of the minerals that it took to put up, which, interesting enough, is 75 minerals. This is interesting development though. The Zerg player is instead deciding to take the gold expansion and act as though he wants to take his natural. We'll see if the Terran player actually noticed that, because it's a fairly unusual move to make on this map. It's pretty risky because if it gets spotted, your reinforcements are so far away that it's going down no matter what you do. Out comes a Hellion, as there's already one on the map, so it's going to be a pretty small push here from the Terran player, but it's going to be pretty respectable. They are going to be pushing out and probably try to push into where the Zerg natural would be. That's normally what you would do as Terran, to try and harass that a little bit from getting some mining going on there and not giving the Zerg that advantage of having an extra base this early. There's actually a couple of SCVs coming up likely to repair the Hellions, but he could also be trying to go for some bunker play. There's a bunch of drones being hidden over here, and I don't know if the Terran player actually sees this. And yes, he does. He does see it, so the drones have to come out and start fighting these Hellions and Marines. He's going to lose so many drones here. Down go a bunch more drones. We'll take a look at the drones loss count after this, but these drones are actually lining up nicely for these Hellions, and he lost almost that entire pack of drones. He's so far behind right now. Out comes some Zerglings, that looks like they actually do have speed on them, so they're going to be all over these Marines and these Hellions. And still, the Hellions deal so much damage, they're going to roast up those Zerglings. The two Hellions are really low on health, so if he really wants to save those, I would actually fall back and just accept that the damage has been done at this point. But he is pushing in a little bit too far. That Hellion's now at 2 health. Here comes up a few Marines, and it looks like he is going to back off. But the strange thing is that this Terran player has to be thinking, why was there a bunch of drones just stashed right here? He's got to be thinking that's very strange. I don't know if these Marines are heading back home. It looks like they are. But if you see something like that where drones are being stashed in a really weird spot, that's got to signal to you that he's not expanded where you expect him to expand. Here come up some Zerglies to try to intercept these Marines. And they're going to. They might actually pick off these hurt Hellions as well. But they're actually fighting the wrong targets. You really want to surround the Hellions, if anything else, and none of the Hellions die. There's actually a couple bunkers going up at the front door here for the Terran player, so he's going to be holding up pretty well while he sends his orbital command over down to his natural. The Zerg is now mining just a little bit on this gold expansion, and I promised we would take a look at the workers lost. Here it is. Zerg player lost 14 workers in that exchange, and the Terran player only lost 3, and those 3 were mostly, I believe it's just his scout and the 2 SCVs he brought to repair those Hellions and or set up bunkers if it got to that point. So the Terran player is actually considerably ahead at this point. Zerg player is just pumping out Zerglings. So we will see where this Zergling play actually leads. One Zergling is going to send up here to kill himself, but it's also going to be for scouting information. He's going to see 2 bunkers up. If I'm this Zerg player, I'd probably start to work on these rocks so I could have a back door into here and hope that the Terran player does not notice. Take a look at Terran's vision. Those rocks are just slightly out of range, but I think if you have health bars on, you still might be able to see that. But this is curious as to why he would be putting out this many Zerglings. I don't think he has a Baneling's Nest up, whereas a Baneling's Nest would actually be pretty nice right now in order to bust that down, or at least bust this front door down. The bunkers are now empty, and the Terran player is going to be dropping off his forces in there and focusing down these queens. Up come the Zerglings in order to try to deny this. This is a lot of Zerglings. You really need to pick this up and get out of there if you can, but one medevac goes down. The other 2 Hellions are lost, so the Zerg player really recovers to this nicely. We take a look at the units lost tab. The Zerg player is still a little bit behind, but in terms of economy, he's definitely has the lead right now. At least if he can keep making drones on here. He's been making a lot of Zerglings and hasn't really done a whole lot with those yet. Here comes a round of 12 drones, if you saw that up there for just a second. 12 drones pop and they're out. He is getting his natural set up, and there goes the hatchery just finishing. Blue Flame is now on the way with some tanks also coming out. Here comes the Zerg player starting to knock down these rocks, and I'm not sure if this Terran player actually notices that these rocks are losing health, or I don't know if he can quite see that. That looks like it's just barely in range of the command center, but still, if this is your vision as Terran, this is all you're going to see. So you have to really be wary and hope that you're going to see those rocks getting knocked down. He's not responding at all to these rocks losing health, so I don't know if he actually sees this. Let's take a look at his vision. He's going to be bouncing between his natural and his main, looking at his army, kind of scoping things out. We're not really sure what he is all clicking on, so this is a little bit obscure, but we can see the destructible rocks health is almost down. We'll go ahead and switch off of his vision, and the rocks are now down. Here comes the harassment from the Zerg player. He could just hold position on these Zerglings and really mess up these SCVs if he wanted to, but he's just going to go ahead and attack with them. Takes out a couple of mules and a whole bunch of SCVs in order to even this count. If you're this Zerg player, you need to really get these Zerglings out of here. I don't think that you really need to sacrifice them, and he does it a little bit late, but he does run those out of there finally, doing considerable economic damage. Take a look at that. The Zerg player is now in the lead in terms of workers killed. So that early huge pack of drones lost is actually negated now, and especially so considering that the Zerg player now has the gold. The Roach Warren is now going up, and there's actually a Baneling's Nest that's been going up for quite a while. What's also really interesting is that Overlord speed and Overlord dropping is on the way, which again on this map you're going to see a lot of drop play, you're going to see a lot of air unit play, but if this Zerg player can load up 3 or 4 Overlords full of Banelings, drop here and then drop on the Marines that might recover to try to kill those Banelings or whatever might be in their base, that would be a really great strategy in order to throw this Terran player off and gain a huge advantage. But we'll see what these drops actually go for. Here's 12 Banelings morphing, as we can see all the little cocoons right here, as well as the roly-poly speed or Baneling speed, whatever you want to call it. I like to call them roly-polies because they just roll around once they have their speed, which looks so funny and it looks really cool at the same time. I love banelings. I don't know about you. Banelings are awesome. Here comes the Terran player knocking down the rocks. He is ready to advance his army in there. He is going to be going ahead and shooting down these rocks, but the Zerg player actually does catch wind of this with this Overlord scouting. So the Zerg player has to know what's going on. There's roaches on the ground to eat damage from the Marines and the tanks. Some Zerglings, but the Banelings are actually loaded up in these Overlords. You can see 3 Overlords filled with Banelings. One of the little bots wants to get in on the fight. He's ready to defend the Zerg player's honor, but I don't think he's going to do much. So spoiler alert, he is not going to make an impact on this battle. There's also 13 roaches being morphed, so the Zerg player is a really odd timing with his drone production and his unit production. It kind of just swaps back and forth so chaotically. But he does have a really nice force on the field to deal with this Terran player's push. Terran player is just leapfrogging his tanks up. He's going to slowly be demanding position. There's Banelings are about ready to drop, but if you're going to do this, you really need to run your roaches and stuff in there to eat all the damage. Up comes some Marines. If you're the Terran player, you need to see that these Overlords have speed and be very cautious. Here come the Banelings, and if he's able to drop these Banelings on top of the Marines, this is going to be huge. Up come the Banelings, and they drop all over the tanks, but they actually don't do that much to the Marines. There's still 2 more Overlords filled with Banelings. It looks like they're actually filled with roaches and Banelings, but wow. The Zerg player really cleans up this attack from the Terran player, and he still has a lot of roaches to boot. There's 16 roaches pressing in. He's going to be fighting this bunker. I would actually recommend him just go around in the space that he already opened instead of just eating damage from all his bunkers and tanks. So he does kind of waste his roaches there, unfortunately for him. Down go the roaches, and that counterattack was cleaned up quite easily. There are a few Overlords just hanging out here. You will want to run those away, and he notices at the same time that I do. Here comes some more drops. Looks like he's getting ready, or rather just more Overlords in production. Zerg player is floating a ton of minerals. You have to wonder what his larva upkeep is like. It looks like he's actually falling behind. Most of the time, if you take this gold hatch, it is a pretty good idea to throw down a macro hatch somewhere in your base so you can spend all your resources effectively. Just a quick little tip there for you guys. Zerg player is also taking his 4th, as we can see right here, as the Terran player advances. The Terran player has the Zerg player has so many roaches that he should be able to just attack move his roaches and clean this up pretty well, but he is not willing to do that. It looks like he's starting to load some Banelings in here once again. But against Terran, I don't know that loading your Banelings in there is really such a great investment. You can just attack move your Banelings along with your roaches. I mean, your roaches are going to eat a ton of damage, and your Banelings can just flank in there and kill those Marines or make the Marines run away so they're not doing any damage to the roaches. But nevertheless, it looks like he likes this drop strategy, which is pretty rare in Terran versus Zerg anyway, or Zerg versus Terran, I mean, whatever side you want to root for. It's pretty rare to see that. Now the Terran player is actually producing Vikings to try and shoot these drops out of the air before they get on there, but one Viking by itself is not going to do enough to stop those. Up press the Marines and the Hellions, does kill one Overlord, and more roaches are rallying here right into a meat grinder. Down go the roaches for absolutely nothing. But these Overlords are basically full of units. Here comes the huge drop, and he's going to go ahead and try to drop right on top of this Terran army. Here out come the Banelings. He's sacking a lot of Banelings on these tanks. More drops of roaches and Banelings all over the place. These Marines just need to run for their lives. And you can see how easily he cleaned up those tanks. There's still more Overlords loaded with units, but the Terran player doesn't really know, so these could be empty for all he knows. There's a few roaches underneath the Overlords that are going to be taking damage, and this Overlord's going to die with 4 roaches in it. That's a huge loss to just lose 4 roaches to 1 Viking. But the Zerg player is just re-maxing, or rather re-macroing up his army of roaches really quickly. So this is becoming a really strange game. The Zerg player has taken his 4th base, but is not mining. There's actually a drop over here that's cleaning up the gold, which isn't all that devastating, considering this gold was actually almost mined out anyway. He just needs to transfer these workers as soon as this gold is mined out, but it does not kill a ton. I mean, it killed a few workers. Check on the units lost tab. There's actually an additional 7 workers lost for the Zerg player. Zerg player is now grabbing Burrow, and he may be going for some Burrow Banelings play, which would be really nice if you got some Banelings Burrow like right here, since this Terran player likes this attack avenue so much. You could really waste those Marines as they came across. That's what I'd like to see, only because I think Banelings are awesome. And burrowing your Banelings and making big landmines or explosive fields is so funny and so fun to watch. So I really hope we get to see something like that.